Hey, what's going on? JD here, and this is the Daily JD. Thanks for tuning in, guys. As always, remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell button so you get notifications when we do, in fact, go live. Thanks again for tuning in. Good to see you already in the chat, Josh. Appreciate that so much. So before we get launched onto things, of course, you can check out my social media links there. Of course, I'm at Paint Inc. and I always tweet out before I go live because we can't always rely on YouTube systems to let you know as well. You can check me out on Instagram at Paint Inc. as well as on Twitch when I do happen to game on the PS4 and play some Mortal Kombat. It's usually over there. You can check me out at Paint Inc. as well. So hopefully you guys had a fantastic last week and a half. Of course, I missed you guys on Thursday because I was out filming, which, you know, it's good. It's nice to get, you know, a nice a day shoot in there. So it was good to do that. Hey, good to see you, Craftsmith. Thanks for tuning in. And we got some spicy jalapenos there from Josh because he is one of our members here on YouTube, and you can do that obviously by sponsoring the channel. The button is right there where you get a bunch of emotes and access to all the prior live streams that you may have not caught live. So that's one of the other perks of it. So, of course, I want to thank our Patreon supporters. That is none other than, of course, Review Review Face. You can check out his channel on YouTube through the link there, as well as our YouTube sponsors. That is Josh WRB. You can check out his channel there. And of course, Mum's Universe. You can check out his channel as well. So thank you guys for supporting the channel month after month. That is greatly appreciated. So I do have a few things to talk about today. I think, you know, having that extra day off, all of a sudden YouTube and Twitch and all sorts of stuff starts exploding with news, as I predicted in last Monday's stream, that things would come unglued, you know, by Thursday. And sure enough, they did. A whole bunch of things have gone on. There are a whole bunch of YouTube news and so on and so forth. So starting with YouTube, YouTube has indicated that they have cut down on questionable content. And they've indicated they have done that through the algorithm. They've been quite successful. They haven't indicated exactly what questionable content is beyond, you know, sort of things that are, you know, very much against their policy, but they've indicated that they have cut that down a great deal and that the algorithm is doing a great job of that. We'll have to take their word for it. Hopefully that is the case and it's not, you know, suppressing people putting out regular content. You know, it's basically, it looks at its stuff contextually, so I don't know if they're doing that with a combination of the algorithm and closed captions or how they're determining contextually how it, you know, sort of violates things, but they've been suppressing that kind of content. As well as in news, YouTube is taking lead from Twitter, and they have canceled almost 400 ads that coincide with the US 2020 election. So YouTube is clamping down on political ads. They have canceled over 300 ads from Donald Trump himself. Twitter was the first social media platform to say, in conjunction with the 2020 election, that there was going to be no political advertising on their platform, which is, you know, it's a good thing, I think, in my mind, because there is, you know, so much stuff that gets circulated around election times, and it gets a little bit much. I mean, we just went through an election here in Alberta and Canada not so long ago, and I tell you, it was getting to the point that it was a little overwhelming with all the political stuff. So it's kind of nice to see that, you know, that's happening. Of course, you know, last election they had issues on Facebook with Cambridge Analytica. Facebook hasn't joined that. I imagine Facebook will run political ads. That's just my guess. And they're really kind of the last stand because YouTube and Twitter have essentially cut things off completely. So they've done, you know, you know, I think a service to everybody doing that. Hey, good to see you, Pete. Hopefully you're feeling well. You know, I heard that your roommate looks like booze reviews in the hospital. Hope you're feeling good, buddy. And I know you've had a crappy year for being in and out of the hospital. So hopefully you are doing all right. So that's kind of what's going on YouTube. And then and another YouTube news as well. PewDiePie has been a victim of a break and enter. This isn't the first time that this has happened. People broke into his Sussex home. Marzia, his wife, lost about, I think it's something like 90% of all her jewelry and expensive, things. She is an Instagram influencer, and they just had a really bad go. Of course, PewDiePie lost a lot of his collectibles. And this isn't the first time it happened. Back in 2016, I think PewDiePie actually put out a video saying, he didn't want fans coming around his house or coming to visit him, that, it was sort of overstepping of bounds. And we've seen that before with creators like Casey Neistat as well, where a lot of people would actually go camp outside his studio across the street in 368 Broadway when he was in New York City, and similar things. And if you actually, kind of deep dive into those things, you will see that there are a lot of creators that kind of go out of their way to run into somebody else. And I mean, it can get a little bit intrusive. I know that there was even an incident in New York with Casey last year where somebody was actually quite aggressive with him outside of 368. So I mean, it's it's one of those things that if you are a creator, it is always good to kind of hide where you live. It's at some point you may expect or not expect visitors, which can be a little bit concerning, depending on your situation, but it's, just so people know out there that if you admire a creator and all those kind of things, don't go camping outside of their house or anything like that. It's just a little bit creepy. It's going to make them very unsettled. Most people that I know, that if you approach them are very, very good and they'll talk to you. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody, and I'm always very, very clear about that, But, some people aren't comfortable with that as well. So you got to be careful. I mean, it's a very, very fine line sometimes. So, but yeah, he had his house broken into, and, it's one of those crazy things, that's going on. So, just keep in mind, that when you're making YouTube videos and all right. Hey, good to see you, Mitch. Everybody sending Pete, are some good wishes from Mitch and Josh there. That's good. So that is fantastic. Yeah, I agree with all those guys. Hope you heal up well. It's it's getting to that time of year that you really, nobody ever wants to be in hospital, but it's a really shitty time of year to be in the hospital. So hope that you are feeling better. In other news as well, the Twitch, sort of exit continues as they continue to pull off creators. This time Facebook's getting involved. So Facebook basically stole Zero, who is a Smash Brothers creator, over on Twitch. They pulled him over with a large sum of money, and the exodus of Twitch continues. The list goes on. Shroud, Ninja, so on and so forth. I think I've talked about it almost every week for the last 5 to 6 weeks, and this is going to continue, and I don't know where this is going to stop, or if it will ever stop, and if, esports are really, going to become like professional athletes, where they just kind of go where the salaries are and sign contracts and move when their contract's up and make that, perfectly public. And if, that will be, sort of the daily news. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon. Will, these platforms get their money out of these creators? Will they get the traffic that they want? That remains to be seen. I'm sure it will be a topic of discussion, later on. Pete says, I'm tempted to switch to TELUS to a U.S. carrier to save a minimum of $25 on my bill, plus have true unlimited data. I'm not sure that works, and how that would work. If they offer roaming in Canada and what the deal is with that. I'm not sure if that's, a viable move, essentially, because, you would be roaming essentially, and then there would be extra, charges on top of that typically, unless they have some sort of roam anywhere. I know that I'm with Freedom, which is, by all accounts, a terrible network to be on. But when you go to the States, it's actually quite good because I get full coverage there, and it costs me nothing. So it's a good deal. So there we go. And I'm talking Canadian too. Sprint looks like a good deal. You never know if those things change. It may be the way to go. So one of the main things that I did want to talk about today is I wanted to talk about David Leitch's film that just kind of got put out the other day. If you haven't seen it, it's called Snowbrawl. It is a short film. And if you don't know who David Leitch is the director of John Wick. So he is accustomed to action films. He also did things like Deadpool 2. But it's interesting because when he put out this short film, it really does put into perspective. There are not a lot of excuses for anybody in this world not to be creating content if that's what they want to do. If you want to be creating videos, that there's no reason that you shouldn't, because by all accounts, this film is very, very well done. It looks great. It sounds great. It's, it's just put together really well. The sequences, all flow together. It's a nice little Christmas short in a sense. The crazy part is when you watch it. If you didn't know, you probably wouldn't have guessed that it was all filmed on an iPhone 11. And I mean, it's obviously in partner with Verizon, since we're talking about cell phone carriers, and Apple. It's kind of a commercial push, but I mean, it is so well done and so well put together. It just shows what you can do with a limited amount of things. And, Josh, who's in the chat here, will probably back me up with this. One of my favorite films that I saw at the 48-Hour Terror Challenge this year was a film called Slasher. It was a little bit of a slapstick kind of horror film. Of course, it involved hockey. It had the best... I'm not going to ruin anything here, but it had the best part was watching a guy get a needle to the dick, it was a hilarious sequence, but it was a good film. And the great thing about that film was they're all guys that chum together. They just kind of get together, film on the weekends, they hang out, and this is what they came up with. They won Fan Choice Award for the 48-Hour Terror Challenge, which is amazing. All filmed on an iPhone because that's what they had. And they just did a great job of things. And, ultimately at the end of the day, it goes to show you that you can have all the gear in the world. If you're not going out and filming and you're not going out and doing things, that, you're not going to be any further ahead. To the same extent, most of us have some sort of cell phone or some sort of device that can record. Just go out and do what you want to do. Tell your stories, do your tutorials, send out whatever message that you want to do. And, the thing is that you have the opportunity to have a voice, and I fully encourage that. You don't need the best gear. You don't need the best sound gear. You don't need, you don't want to use things as a crutch, to stop you from doing stuff. If you find yourself doing that, chances are, you're just trying to make excuses not to do things. The best thing you can do is you just go out and film and do your thing and have a good time doing it. And, I encourage you to watch this Snowbrawl film because you will see, it looks like a Hollywood film in so many ways, just the way it's shot. And that's it. When you go out and you learn your trade and you learn the camera angles and you learn how to frame things properly and you learn how to, film action and, make cuts and all these kind of things, you are building on your skill set. And everybody has to start somewhere. Hopefully through the process of making videos and doing what you love. And it doesn't matter what you are. Everybody has a starting point, and you've got to start somewhere. When you start out playing guitar, maybe you do go buy a nice Gibson guitar for $7,000-8,000 and play on that, or maybe you don't. Essentially, it is the same instrument, 6 strings. It might not sound as fantastic, but it's a start, and you will build those skills as you move along, and you will get better as things move forward. So, I mean, there's a time to start, because nobody starts at 100%. Nobody jumps into anything and is the best there is. There is always room for improvement. You will always continue to grow, and the more that you do something, the better off you will be. Even myself, when I started vlogging, I think there was a lot of vlogs that I didn't even publish because I just didn't, feel, but I was still going out and I was practicing and I was doing, and eventually I got to a point where I'm just like, I need to publish this. And if you watch older vlogs, you can see how terribly uncomfortable I am in front of a camera. I can honestly say that I am still very uncomfortable in front of a camera, but I'm not as uncomfortable as I once was, and that develops over time, through the years of doing things like vlogs. I have become more and more comfortable in front of the camera, where, I was completely comfortable behind the camera and I could have stayed there forever, but, I just wanted to sort of build. And that's, kind of what I always encourage people to do, is push yourself to do things, a little bit different, try new things, expand your realm of experience, and grow as an individual, because that's the thing, that was a whole part of my vlogging thing, which I still do to this date. I still vlog. Part of it was to get more comfortable in front of the camera and step out of there and gain more confidence speaking in front of people, be a little less introverted than I am naturally, and just kind of get my voice heard. So there you go. Jumping back to the comments. Does anyone have experience with this? They told me they did it on a new iPhone as well. I guess that's cell phone talk. Hey, caught your stream. I've had to do a test. It was way sharp, way too clean to be a phone video. I don't know. I think I think it really is. I think I think they have gone out and they've really done it. With sharpness of video, I find that, to get that sort of film look is usually harder to attain than it is to get something that's razor sharp. That's why camcorders, even in, the 80s, were very, very clean looking in comparison. But I do think it, I still think it is a phone, ultimately at the end of the day. And I mean, you can just see how, it translates to the big screen, even with Slasher. Pete says Bollywood film. There you go. Bollywood horror film. There you go. Epiphone. Yes, absolutely. So yeah, that's kind of what we had in store for today. If you have anything that you do want to discuss or talk about, by all means, throw it in the chat. I have a new video coming out tomorrow. I will be unboxing the DJI Mavic Mini, so please do check that out tomorrow. I know it was a phone. It's just crazy to me because it all looks so good now. Yeah, technology has come such a far way. It really does enable people to get out and film. I mean, most people have a phone by default. Even if you can't necessarily afford a phone, a lot of times if you sign up with a phone provider, which most of us need a phone to communicate, you will be able to get a phone for next to nothing if you sign away for a contract. Most of us have phones that are sort of kicking around. I mean, I had an old 5S, kicking around that I've used for different things. So, I mean, they do happen to be there. There's not a great big expenditure like you would going out and buying a DSLR and glass and a Rode video mic and a whole bunch of other things. those things definitely add up. There's nothing stopping you from, sitting down and, doing talking head videos with an iPhone, and again, this exemplifies that you can even make a short film that is amazing. It's very John Wick-esque, Snowbrawl. You can see those camera turns and, how they capture the action, and, some of the leaps and the slow motion. And it really does show that, that camera has some good capacity as well, and you could probably easily edit it on that phone if you don't even have a computer, because Apple does have some software, and there is some software that is third party that is available as an app that are decent editors. You might not be able to do all the fancy things that you can do on a desktop with something like After Effects or Motion 5, but at the end of the day, you can definitely put together something that looks really good. We should do something for our birthday, JD. My birthday is coming up. I am a round Christmas baby. So it's kind of an interesting time because everybody's celebrating Christmas, and I celebrate my birthday very close to that. It's I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. It's just one of those things. I don't even think. I think I'm home alone for Christmas, so I will be. It's gonna be just me and the dogs. So we'll see what goes on. I'm not gonna probably venture too far because anybody who knows me, and has met my dogs knows that my buddy Max is getting pretty old and pretty long in the tooth, and he's doing all right. He's still trucking along on his own power. We've, put some socks on him so he doesn't slip on the hardwood floor as much, but he's definitely showing his age. He's deaf, and he's a little bit blind, but he still loves food and he still loves hanging out. But I don't know how far I'll be venturing because I don't like leaving them alone for terribly a long time, especially with him being, older, and, he just needs your attention on that a little bit more. And he's been a good buddy of mine for a long time, so I need to take care of him in his old age. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Josh says, I like the weight of the real camera, but I guess an iPhone would have some good image stabilization built in too. Yeah, I mean, the digital stabilization that is available through anything from a GoPro to an iPhone to, an Android phone, they're doing a really good job of image stabilization there through the software. That seems to be where a lot of the push is. We've seen that with things like the GoPro 7, GoPro 8. Works very, very well. As well, throwing something like that on a small gimbal, which is terribly inexpensive, would stabilize that footage even more. It's kind of interesting. It would be an interesting challenge to do, as well as just to film something 100% with a phone and leave it as that. So maybe that's something that we can all do, and maybe we can have like an iPhone challenge, but I know not everybody's on an iPhone. A cell phone shoot challenge where you just go and shoot with a cell phone and see if anybody can realize, or what you can produce with it. Just challenge yourself to do that, because it works well. And I mean, I've said this before as well with the vlogs. I use everything from the Sony A7 III to the G7X, which is a little tiny point and shoot camera, which I absolutely love. The original one, so it's like two versions ago. There's like the G7X2, the G7X3 that now exists. I have the original one. It has been beaten to death. I have to pry the lens every once in a while, enable the shutter to open, and I'll use things like the Osmo, which is stabilized camera. But a lot of times people don't even recognize what I'm using, or they think that it's something else and it's something completely different. That's how, and I use the phone as well. It just, whatever camera I happen to have with me, and I'll bring different loadouts for different things. Sometimes, like when Josh and I went to the Calgary Flames, bringing a detachable lens into the dome is not permitted. And I know that from working there, that if you're not working there, they're not going to let you bring in your big vlogging rig, but you can bring in a little point and shoot, and you can definitely get the job done. And even if they didn't allow that in, you would definitely have your cell phone camera, and that vlog is a mix of exactly that. It's a mix of my cell phone as well as the G7X. So it's whatever camera you happen to have with you. A lot of times now I do like to go out and film with the Sony because I can capture stuff in 4K. I do like that, and I love, sort of how that works with the 120 frames a second, even at 1080. It's a great camera. I enjoy that, but again, it depends on the circumstances of the situation. It's whatever you want to do. The Sony is great for low light, and I'll bring it where I can, but sometimes it's not practical because you do have to carry some gear with you. We share birthdays, laugh out loud. We do. I'm showing my age. Oh wait, I'm younger than you. You are much younger than me. I've been around for a very, very long time. We started actually filming the podcast Dudecast again yesterday. Nick was here. We started filming season 3, and it was funny. We had a conversation that reminded me how old I was because he was talking about an album that was released when he was 13 years old, I think, and I was well into my 20s at that point, and made me feel my age for a moment because it made me realize the age difference, although it never usually crosses my head. We should hit some beers and a movie at least over the holidays for your birthday, or figure out something to vlog for fun. It sounds like a plan, man. It's because I think after I know that I've got some video shoots, but I don't have terribly a lot of stuff. And depending on how busy you are too, I want to talk to you about hiring you for a logo, because I need a logo for the new podcast. And I was thinking of potentially getting you to do it because get something different, a different aesthetic than normally I would put out, because all my stuff starts looking the same to me, and I kind of want something that stands out and a little bit of difference. So if you're down for that, let me know. Peter says, that is why I had to give up my Nikon S9500 for my Canon T6. It broke to hell, and that's going to happen. And you know what? Like, at the end of the day, if you have a camera and it breaks, because you used it all the time, that's fantastic. That's the best way for a camera to be retired, when it just stops working, when it stops working for you. And again, equipment, it isn't everything. I will go and I will take concert photos. I use 5D Mark III, which is an older Canon camera. It's, the latest is a 5D Mark IV or 1DX2. And people will take a look at my photographs and like, how do you get, your photos so sharp? How do you get the colors that you do? Like, how do you do that? It's, and they're using cameras that are more advanced than mine, and they should be doing a better job overall. But a lot of times it's how you use the camera and utilize it. And at the end of the day, I think as long as you're not, in total extremes. I mean, if I was using the original Digital Rebel, you would definitely see a difference in a concert compared to a 5D Mark III. But, as a whole, you're not terribly going to notice. Nobody's going to say, haha, that guy's using a lesser camera. It's not going to happen. If you take great photos, you take great photos. So again, gear isn't everything, man. It's one of those things. Josh says Pete says, Josh, that'd be a great idea. Josh says, hell yeah. Pete says, I'm watching the sunset behind the mountains. So you must be in Rocky View, is my guess, because they have the best view, because I've spent my time in hospital as well, unfortunately. They have the best view of the mountains going in the city. And they have that great outlook where you can look over Glenmore Reservoir. It's kind of peaceful. I like that hospital for that. I spent a long time in that hospital at one point. I spent I was in there at one point in my life for over 6 months. In that hospital, and I was quite young at the time, and it's hard to sit still when you're young, but that's one thing I do cherish and remember is that. Josh says, but when it's low light and you're forced to shoot at like ISO 3000 or so because higher slow lens, what do you do to make the black not noisy? The truth of the matter is I shoot when I start a concert or a show. A lot of times I will shoot at 2.8, 1/320th of a second, and 6400 ISO. I usually land at 6400 to 3200 in the ISO range. That's where I shoot. That's where I spend the majority of my life. And noise, it depends. Again, you can have poor lighting, and you can have extremely poor lighting. It's all about freezing the action and sort of getting that balance between that. You can slow shutter speed to a point, but then you start getting the motion blur and the noise. And I mean, you do have a little bit of noise as well in something along the lines of 3200 to 6400, but ultimately it doesn't matter at the end of the day. There's going to be no noise in photographs, and as long as you're comparable to everybody else, it's not going to matter. I always, say that you want to be, you want to stand out from the pack when you take photographs. So when you photograph, my best example is Tool. Tool, for anybody who's seen them, they have a spectacular big laser light show, which is crazy. If Maynard stands in the back, and he is in complete darkness, and last time around he was wearing like riot suit gear, which was all black. I mean, virtually impossible to photograph. And I think I was up at like 12,800 ISO to capture anything, and it was very, very grainy, and you could tell it, but the shots were good. As long as focus is sharp, as long as you're catching focus, you'll be all right. It's when you're missing focus, that's when it becomes problematic. That's when when things start to break apart, become really, really problematic. And I find that people that are inexperienced in those situations, what it is they missed focus, or they didn't catch the shot at the right time. So they're using a frame that isn't in focus, and that lack of focus is really exemplified by the noise. Whereas mine, you'll there's noise there. If you take a look, there is noise there. You can reduce a little bit of noise in post-production with Lightroom as well. As long as you're shooting raw, you can dial that down, but you don't want to make the mistake that I find a lot of amateurs make as well. They will do things like bump up the clarity to something ridiculous, where somebody who's got wrinkles and, dimples, or, they've got some character. Their face looks like they've been airbrushed with, the latest Jeffree Star makeup line. That's too much, So, but you can definitely do that. We'll throw that up. Mine is f4. F4 is difficult. I start pushing. My aperture is usually always around 2.8. Because that's where variable zoom lens typically lie, although some of the newer ones do go lower than that. If you're shooting with primes, you can get faster lenses than that, but then you've just got that slither of focus. And again, I find that focus causes you more issues than anything else. F4 is, when I start turning up things, sometimes I will shoot at 4.5, 5.6, so you should be able to do that with an F4. But again, if you are in a dingy little club that is just, lighting up the stage with red lights and, then blue lights and then back to red lights, it's a nightmare, because all you're going to get is black and white shots, because there's no color to be had anyways. Pete says, when I was in my prime, I could walk between 25 and 30,000 steps. If I could have, I did more. Josh says, my wife was just at Foothills today. I hope she's all right. I hope Kissy is all right. Hey, Nick, good to see you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Honestly, Tool has one of the most boring shows ever in the world. The lights and lasers are cool, but I'd like to see a band perform. I saw them once and I wanted my money back. Fair enough. Not for everybody. If you see Pussifer is a bit of a different performance. Maynard's, let's just be honest. Maynard's weird. He's just a weird musician. He does weird things, and Maynard does what Maynard does, and that's you gotta have to take it or leave it. I am a huge Tool fan. I enjoy their music. And I enjoy it without the use of substances, which is something to be said. I think more people there are on substances than anything else, and that's probably why the laser show is such a hit most of the time. But he's always good to see. Again, if you are in a massive stadium and you can't, if you're far enough back, you will never see Maynard. Because he is absolutely in blackness. Whereas I have a bit better seat, so we're okay with that. Nice Jeffree Star reference. Thanks, Views Reviews. Thanks for tuning in. Josh says, I love my 50 mil 1.4. I hang around 2.8. Yeah, I mean, fast lenses are great. 1.4 is great. I have the 1.4 Sigma 35. I seldom shoot at 1.4 because it is such a slither of focus. It's so easy to miss. If it's there, you can, like I said, you can dial it down to gain that extra little bit of light, which could make a difference in certain situations. But, at certain points to try to avoid it. Like I said, if I can do it, I would rather shoot at, 6400 and push my aperture up to 4.5 or maybe more, if I can get more in focus, because again, a lot of the noise issues that you get during, low light situations and concert photography is because people miss focus, and that's just because it's a slither. And of course, with cameras, it's not a pinpoint accuracy, it's a range. And especially if you're, shooting somebody at a mic, a lot of times it will pick up that microphone, and if they're behind or to the side, you miss focus very, very easily. Booze Review says, got hit with a 12-800 noise photo and it was hard to edit without getting it to look like it was airbrushed, and it was a group photo. Yeah, I mean, 12.8's pushing it, and, again, I rarely get up there, again, that was my Tool reference, was that I shot them up there because, he's in pitch black, and that's the only way you're going to see him. You have to utilize the camera to sort of bump those lights up, and that's the situation. If you're doing group photos or anything like that, light, bringing lights and shooting lights is the better way to go in those regards. Because it can be tricky. And if it's a group photo and they're not moving as well, I would opt to slow down shutter speed, use a tripod, and, of course, stabilize the camera that way and reduce my ISO to avoid a little bit of that. Speaking of, need to get back to editing. You bet. I guess that makes sense. I've never done hard drugs of any kind, and I don't associate with those that do in general, so that's likely why the show was so bad. Yeah, I mean, I can honestly say, going to concerts, there are, at the best of time, a ton of people that are blitzed out of their mind. I would imagine that, shows like Tool and Pink Floyd and, a lot of these things, that there is a lot of drug culture involved with certain bands, the Grateful Dead, so on and so forth. Not my scene. I'm just there for the music. I'm not a drug guy really at all. And, I'm not really, I'll have my beers every once in a while, and that's kind of it. And those have been few and far between too. I think the last time I had a beer was at the meetup that we just had, and that was a few weeks ago already. And prior to that, I think it was like a month before that. So, I mean, it's kind of a rare thing. It's, usually when I have a beer, it's like I'm going to the movies, have a beer, go to the movie, and that's kind of it. It's not, I'm not 20 years old anymore, so we don't do those kind of things. Wish I had been high, could have been life-changing. There you go. I've been high before, and I wouldn't want to do it again, except, again, opioids like medical-grade heroin, fentanyl, etc. It's crazy, the medication that people give you, and it's all kind of crazy. I know, personally, I don't like any kind. When I had a bad accident once and they pumped me up with morphine, I did not react well to it. Ever since then, if I've ever been hurt, and when I fell down the mountain, and you can listen again to the Dude Cast, you can hear me talk about all that. But when I got pulled into hospital, they wanted to give me morphine, and I actually refused. I took no painkillers after falling 75 feet and smashing into a tree. I took, I think I took some ibuprofen and Tylenol to take the edge off, but I refused any kind of opioid drug, which brought on a whole line of questioning from medical practitioners, whether I was a drug addict or not, or if I was an intravenous drug user. I guess that's the thing with BC, is that they're going to ask you those kind of questions, which I've never been, and I'm not. But I just don't, like how I react to it. I didn't like how I feel, and it's just nothing I wanted to do with. I just kind of dealt with the pain. And, for me, and Mitch is still here, he'll tell you that I'm the kind of person that I like to feel the pain that I have, because it's there for a reason. It tells me when I'm doing things that I shouldn't be doing. It's just kind of an indicator. So I don't like to dull those kind of things. I like to feel what I'm feeling, so I know that I'm not hurting myself further. Yes, it's a bit to deal with, but that's kind of it. And I've had some major medical issues with my hip and so on and so forth, and consistent pain. But I would rather be sort of clear, instead of taking a bunch of oxycodone, which has been offered up in the past, which I've refused as well, or morphine or anything along in those lines. It doesn't do good things for me, and everybody reacts to stuff differently. I'm not saying that you can't take those things and not get addicted, or you can take those things. I'm not suggesting that you don't do those things. I'm just saying, for me, it doesn't work well. It completely whacks me out, and I'm not in a good space, and I can't do it. I just can't do it, because I don't think good things will happen in the end. So that's kind of my 2 cents on those. Smoke weed every day. Yeah. I like my clarity. I do like my clarity. It's I'm not sure why. I think that's from me being a fighter for so long, and when I fought professionally, I did not drink or anything from the age of, I would say, 21 till about 37. I did not even drink a drop of alcohol during that time. I was completely, and the reason being is that, number one, mostly is that alcohol contains a ton of calories, and I didn't want to waste calories on beer. I was putting more better nutrients in my system, but I mean, it was a crazy long time to do that, and it was completely razor straight lifestyle for a very, very long time. Peter says, I get some medical stories to tell you if anyone is interested. There you go. So yeah, that is awesome, JD. I don't know if it's awesome. It's just, it was just a choice. I mean, when you are fighting, and I was fighting professionally, it was very serious, when I looked to go to Worlds, and when I was fighting on the national team. And I mean, there's drug use policies as well. So if I were to use something, even that you can get over the counter, sometimes, that there's a potential for positive drug testing, which would have basically sewered my career. You just don't risk those things, because what's important to you is getting into the ring and having those fights and having those successes and doing that. And that's just kind of where I occupied. It's even things like I'm trying to remember it. ECA Stacks, aspirin, caffeine, and ephedrine. So ephedrine, for example, which you find in cough syrup, is actually a banned substance. So if you have too much of that in your system, you can fail your drug test. So I mean, it's a very kind of strict thing, and it's something that I didn't want to mess with. I mean, people might remember things like Ross Rugliati, the Canadian snowboarder who tested positive for marijuana and lost his Olympic medal because of it. Those are situations I would have never wanted to get in. So I mean, it was just a very clean lifestyle, because that's what I had to do. ECA, yeah. Ephedrine, caffeine, and aspirin, which was banned as well. I remember at one point actually doing that ECA Stacks, which increased, and it's dangerous. Don't do this, kids. Don't use it. But back in the day, they didn't know a lot about it. You would stack those, and what it would do was essentially keep your metabolism going. It was a great diuretic and weight loss supplement. And yeah, Excedrin was as Nick indicates, was sort of the commercial version, or Hydroxycut, which still exists, but it's a different formula. I used to just buy straight stuff. You can't even buy. There used to be a factory right on Blackfoot Trail that produced ephedrine, and you could just go there. And I remember buying, straight ephedrine, so I could stack it myself, which is crazy because eventually all that got done away with because ephedrine is sort of the key ingredient in meth. And, that's why you have people that go and buy tons of cough stuff because they'll extract it and they'll make their meth that way. But you could buy that stuff by the barrel, which is crazy now because a barrel of that stuff would be worth millions of dollars. And I remember buying, a little, $10 for 100 pills or whatever the case may be, which would be worth a fortune again today because pure ephedrine, it just doesn't exist anymore. So there you go. Next, thins the blood to increase blood flow, increase the heart rate, body temp, etc., etc. Yeah, and again, extremely unhealthy. Don't do it. It screws up your metabolism big time. Again, it was used by a lot of fighters at the time when it was legal to do it, to essentially cut weight effectively. And again, you do kind of weird and wonderful things when you have to cut weight, everything from wearing rubber suits to, sitting in saunas with garbage bags and all sorts of weird and wacky stuff to make weight, only to sort of put it back on. It's a very unhealthy, sort of ritual that involves fighters, because the truth of the matter is you want to fight at the heaviest weight you can, but you have a weigh-in and you have to make those weights. So for myself, I used to fight 165 pounds. So I would cut 20 pounds. I would drop from about 175, 185. I would drop down to 165 for a weigh-in, which was one moment in time. And then I would rehydrate and take a bunch of electrolytes and rehydrate myself. And by the time I was ready to fight, I was anywhere from 10, 15, 20 pounds heavier, which is ridiculous. So there you go. Nick says now it's clenbuterol. Also, you can still get ephedrine, but it's a controlled substance, so clen for that matter. So there you go. Yeah, I mean, that's the funny thing about that industry, the health sports industry and sports, kind of the GNCs of the world, where they have all these, wonderful get you fit, make you fast. A lot of these substances that start off, they have approval, they're fine. Then they start doing tests and realize what they actually are, and then they get approved. Like I believe that things that used to get it wasn't a steroid, but it was the androtestosterone, andro. So when guys used to do andro, that wasn't a banned substance at the time, and then eventually it did. And if you remember things like Mike McGuire and Jose Canseco, they all got nailed with it because everybody was using it. There was also issues with things like creatine. It's a whole different world that you can get sucked into. Really different time. Ty Digital is live now too. Awesome. Except he'll be over on Twitch. Andy and Peters, one day when I went to Rexall to pick up my prescription, I went down to the cough syrup aisle and I had to pick up stuff for my family. Mom turned to me and demanded if I was cooking meth. I'll tune to the cough syrup. Probably not. You need a lot of it. You need. Yeah, they get guys that are called Smurfs to get in and do that for you. Yeah, I can see your point though, Peter. You're a bit of a Walter White type. There you go. I finally did sit down and watch El Camino, which was really enjoyable. If you haven't seen it, I do recommend. If you like Breaking Bad, watch it. It's good. Androstenedione. It was a pro hormone, they called it, but it was just a steroid. There you go. The mother went to the pharmacist and tried to kick me out. Pharmacy, the pharmacist laughed at her. There you go. Interesting stuff. So, yeah, I mean, that is a whole, if you want a crazy YouTube channel to talk about stuff, just talk about weight supplements and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that is a giant rabbit hole, and, you know, you got to know your chemicals, and it's a crazy, crazy thing. And I'm glad, I really am glad that I don't have to do that kind of stuff anymore, where I don't have to, you know, sort of balance things and take all these crazy things and performance enhancing stuff that, you know, you think is going to make you faster and cut weight and all that kind of stuff. It's just kind of a crazy thing, because they tell you it's all safe, and really ultimately at the end of the day, I don't believe it is. It just kind of messes with your system. So if you haven't done so ever yet, please do smash that like button in the video. At this point, I'm going to click the insert ad. If you do have anything else that you want to talk about, please do throw it into the chat. I greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. That is absolutely fantastic. We are probably going to wrap things up here pretty quick, unless, like I said, there is anything else in the chat that you guys want to discuss. As I mentioned before as well, or actually what Josh mentioned, if you're looking for something to watch after this, head over to Twitch. Ty Digital is streaming there. He is a local Fortnite streamer. If you're into Fortnite, watching gaming, Ty Digital, good kid. Met him at the Twitch meetup. He is an awesome guy. And if I recall correctly, he was also at the YYC Music Awards. He is part of a group, and they actually won an award, so that's an interesting part. Every time I pick up some cough syrup, the pharmacist and I have a good laugh. That's good. Rock and roll, buddy. Glad I caught the last half. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, thanks, guys. Smash that like button. Appreciate it as always. And I will see you on Thursday. And until the next time, see ya.